And greetings, nerdos! Welcome to episode 4 of 78 episodes, 30 good ones. I am your red shirt quality host, Oliver Rockside. Thank you very much for joining me. And thank you very much for everybody who has joined me in the last 3 episodes. It's very exciting to see everybody listening. Just a reminder to help grow our community, if you'd like to give us a star rating on iTunes, and if you have the time, maybe perhaps a comment, good or bad, as I always like to say. I welcome kudos, recipes, gardening tips, and your simmering outrage. So you can do all of those things on iTunes, and that'll help us grow the community. I have exciting news today, however, nerdos, because for the first time, and I just realized this today, and I was telling him off air that I just realized this today. For first time for any podcast that I have done, we have a newbie, certified fresh nerdo. Because, and it's very important that he's here today, because not only does he work in the entertainment industry, he is also the co-creator of the inspiration of the quote, Clara warning, unquote. And because of that, in his and Clara's honor, we are going to issue a full Clara warning for this episode. So I have to keep my potty mouth in check. But but most importantly, he is a 5-star on Yelp rated pizza aficionado, and we have to chat because this is the genius of our guest, because he knows where the best pizza in North America is made, and I do too. So we're going to talk about that. Doug Slater is here today. Thank you, Doug, so much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Oliver. I'm so happy to be here. And yes, I am probably a little bit more excited to speak about pizza than I am Star Trek, but that's okay.
But that's a given. Like that's a 24/7 given, right?
Yeah, pretty much. In fact, I just finished eating some pizza tonight.
Yes, but it was not the best pizza in the world.
No, it was terrible Toronto pizza.
Oh, how could you? That's sacrilege.
You know, Clara likes the pizza crust. She hasn't had.
It doesn't taste like anything.
She hasn't had the delicious pizza of Windsor.
Now, this is where we have to talk. Now, for people in North America, you probably don't know where Windsor is. Windsor makes the greatest pizza in North America. I have been all over North America, 9 provinces, 48 states, including Hawaii. I have been to 8 European countries and 1 country in Central America. I have never had pizza as good as Windsor pizza, and I have been to Italy. Now, for those who are uninitiated, Doug, please explain to people what Windsor pizza is.
Windsor pizza, I guess it's first of all, if you kind of just think of the difference between a New York style pizza and, like, say, a Detroit style pizza.
Yes, we have to explain what Detroit style pizza is, because they're only a mile apart, but they are very different.
So, first of all, Windsor, for those who don't know, is actually south of Detroit.
May I make a little editorial at this point, Doug, please?
Sure. Yeah.
It drives me crazy because the most popular karaoke song in the world is Don't Stop Believin'. Don't Stop Believin' makes a huge geographical area, because at one point it is mentioned that someone grew up in South Detroit.
Well, that's Windsor.
Newsflash, people, there's no such thing as South Detroit. South Detroit is Windsor. Anyway, go on.
So where you think of sort of the New York style pizza that is kind of got a thin crust, and it's usually baked on a metal tray of some sort. And then you've got your Detroit style pizza, which is kind of like deep dish Chicago pizza, which is sort of the thick, lots of crust. Of course, now the Detroit style brings cheese and sauce right to the edge of a pan, and it's baked in a special pan that was an old tool tray, apparently, from the factories.
Yeah, a blue steel pan. Yep.
But what makes Windsor pizza special is that it's kind of got a crust that is somewhere between the two. So it has kind of a slightly bready crust, but it's thinnish. It's not overly chewy, but it's not. It doesn't flop over. You don't have to fold it in order to eat it, and I
Right.
think that's important. You're not in danger of losing all your toppings when you pick up your pizza.
No.
And so then the next and probably most important part of Windsor pizza is pepperoni.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just your ordinary pepperoni, it has been julienned or
Mm-hmm.
shredded
Yes.
and placed in such a manner that placed on top of the cheese and so that it gets nice and crispy underneath the in the wood fired oven usually that is baked right on stone and the other thing is well well before we get to the key ingredient we'll also talk about how underneath the pizza itself it's actually cooked on cornmeal as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to on flour so you don't get that burny flouriness in your mouth
Yep.
when you yeah. But the best of all is got to be the Galati cheese. It's the
Mm-hmm.
special. There's a company in Windsor called Galati Cheese, and they are in the. I believe they're in the west end of Windsor,
Yeah,
and
they're off Tecumseh. Yep.
yeah, and
Right
they
at the bend. At the bend. Yep.
yeah, and they make a something called the Uniondale mozzarella, and they use all of the milk from the I think it's the Essex County area, maybe even the Kent County area,
Mm-hmm.
and turn it into mozzarella there. Rumor has it that their cheese pond is basically the size of like they basically have like an Olympic pool size amount of cheese on
Mm-hmm.
hand at any one point,
Yes,
and
we should.
it's fantastic.
Oh, it is. Now we should point out that everybody in Windsor gets their cheese from Galati.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it's basically cornered the market. The other
yeah.
thing that we should point out
Oh yes, yep.
are canned mushrooms,
Mushrooms, yep,
which I just love because one of the things about putting fresh mushrooms on a pizza and then putting it in the oven is that you get this mushroom bath at the end of it
yep,
because there's so much water in fresh
yep,
mushrooms.
yeah.
Canned
And
mushrooms, and I know everybody's doing an eye roll right now, but believe me, they work on a Windsor pizza.
they this is the only way I ever knew pizza until
Mm-hmm.
I was 19 years old and I moved up to Ottawa for school.
Mm-hmm.
And probably within our first week there we had pizza and I almost gagged. It was just not it was not what I remembered pizza as being. I just couldn't understand why anybody would eat this garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And I've missed it ever since I've moved away. I think I've been back since I was 20, in my late 20s. I've only been back to Windsor 2 or 3 times and
Mm-hmm.
get pizza each time, but it's not enough to tie you over.
When
So,
I live in Canada, during the summer months, I drive 300 kilometers, so about 180 miles, to go to Capri Pizza in Windsor if I have a
mm,
craving.
hmm
It's worth the drive, people.
yep.
Anyway, we've spoken about 8 minutes about pizza. Well worth it, I might add. Uh,
I'll add one more thing though. When you go through, try out Armando's.
I've tried Armando's. That's right across.
Yeah.
No, Arcada's right across the street, isn't it? From on Dougal. I've
Uh,
tried.
yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried Arcada. That was a disappointment.
Yeah. But
Armando's, though.
Armando's has a guy there he goes by the name of he's got an Instagram. It's like Dr. Za or
Hmm.
something like that. And he was a winner, like a world pizza trade winner or something like that, back in 2017, I believe, for what he has called the Windsor style pizza, which he's making sort of a his version of a Detroit style, but with some Windsor style thrown into it. And
Hmm.
he basically lives pizza. He's like my dream. Like you know, like, he spends his whole life thinking about pizza, the dough, the sauce, the cheese, the toppings, and how they taste together. And I've yet to actually go there. I've sort of drooled over the many videos and interviews with him about his uh, his views on pizza and why Windsor pizza is so special. They even have their own. I'll extend the pizza conversation for another 15 seconds or so, so we get a full 10 minutes.
You can extend it a full half hour to me.
um, they the Windsor community has realized how special Windsor pizza is because There are people who are ex-Windsorites who have like moved out to Calgary and have basically, or even Vancouver, and have asked for Windsor pizza to be shipped out to them.
Mm-hmm.
As well. So that's happened, and there's been a lot of people that have made sort of pilgrimages to the Windsor area to get the pizza,
Mm-hmm.
and so much so that the I think it's the Chamber of Commerce or the Tourism Board has basically made a Windsor pizza card, and you go and you like it's kind of like Pokemon. You go and collect them all. You go to all the participating restaurants and you try each one because everybody's kind of got a little slightly different take on it, and it's great.
Yes, I find Capri a little bit the sauce. I'm not a big sauce guy,
Mm-hmm.
so I always get light sauce. But I'm always it always has a very Ariabata kind of
Yep, it's got
zinginess to it. Yeah,
slight zing. Yeah.
yeah. Now just to wind up this particular part of the conversation, just so you know, Detroit pizza also uses different cheese. We must point
Mm-hmm.
this out. They they do use mozzarella, but they use a combination of mozzarella and Munster.
And
Uh,
brick, I
and
think is the
brick
other one they
sometimes,
use.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So just be so there we are. We have wrapped up your pizza needs, people.
Look, if anybody wants to talk more about pizza, come on over to my pizza podcast.
There we go. Anyway, speaking of carbs, Doug, we must carb load at this particular point,
Right.
and we're going to start with a third season episode. And you know, in the past episodes, one of the things that I've tried to shine a spotlight on, at least in two of them, have been episodes that you may have forgotten about that were really good. We begin with an episode you may have remembered, but it is so much worse than you remember. That is the third season, Day of the Dove. And it's so great to have Doug here because he works behind the scenes in the entertainment industry. And the most striking thing about watching this episode again, Doug, was just unbelievably how cheap this was.
Oh boy, it was so cheap.
The production values are like in a negative star range.
You're gonna by the time we finish this podcast, you're gonna be tired of me pointing out the problems on these episodes.
That's okay. That's what you're here for. The makeup is disastrous. Everybody's very shiny, Doug.
Oh, like I watch it and I'm looking for Kleenex and blotter paper. I just feel like I'm sweating and shiny and greasy. The caking was just so enormous. There's even a scene right near the end where one of the characters falls up against a wall.
Yes,
and it marks the dang wall.
We're gonna get to that because I looked at it and I'm like, what? Nobody caught that in the edit? Anyhow, Day of the Dove is basically stealing the idea of Wolf in the Fold, in the fact that an alien entity which feeds off of fear or violence kind of impregnates itself into the Enterprise. And it's done with Klingons. Now, I have to say this, and I know this is going to be very controversial, but all three of our episodes today are going to involve Klingons. And it's just not, Klingons are just not my favorite thing. I find the Romulans so much more interesting until the Jem'Hadar arrived, and that's a different conversation for a different day.
But I think that the big problem is that they're one dimensional.
Well, and there's also in our second carb that we're going to talk about, there's a huge plot hole that nobody ever fixed. But I just don't find them even when we get to things like Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. I kind of accept them, but it's just not a big thing. But in this particular instance, we have Klingons. This is the head Klingon is played by Michael Ansara, who was, of course, brought back for an episode of Deep Space Nine, and his wife. And they decide to beam down to a planet which has apparently been destroyed, yet shows no sign of any wreckage, no sign of any violence, no sign of anything except for styrofoam rocks.
Well, and very, very gorgeous pink feathers as flowers.
Yes.
which
So
I think may have come from our other episode.
yes. So this whole battle is started with uh, somehow the Klingon ship being destroyed. So the Klingons come aboard the Enterprise, and there's 38 Klingons, and after a little while, there becomes 38 Federation members, and they just all fight. And suddenly, all of their weapons of destruction get turned into swords, so they can do more damage on each other. Yet everybody heals from every wound, so this entity can feed off this level of violence. The story itself, as I said, is a copy of Wolf in the Fold. It's just that how it's done and the actual. I mean, I've never really. We're going to talk about a future episode, which is basically a stage play,
Mm-hmm.
and using very minimal sets because of the cheapness. And it works so much better than this because the cheapness of everything just takes you completely out of this, Doug. Don't you feel?
Yeah. I mean, I look at this episode. I mean, first of all, this thing was filmed in 5.5 days, and you can see that.
Yeah.
But I also look and I see that I think the first iteration of the script was like months and months before.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there must have been a large amount of editorial problems and issues with how they were going to make this thing actual good episode.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's basically it's a bottle episode.
Yes.
And this is the kind of thing that when a show is kind of coming to a eventual end or mid-season after they've been going for a while, they start to run out of money, and they say, okay, let's just write to the sets that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't afford to go out on location, we can't afford to build new sets, let's just do what we have. Now it looks, I imagine they built the engineering area for this episode, but they didn't leave. Like, I think they were on stage the whole time.
Yeah.
And the fact, I can't get over the fact that they did it in 5.5 days. But then there's certain takes there where I say, well, you could have taken a few more days and maybe done one or two more takes.
Yeah.
There's a scene where um I think it's Scotty goes down to engineering. No, he goes to the armory or
Mm.
whatever they call it, and he's supposed to be looking for weapons because I guess everybody wants the aliens are making everybody want to fight each other.
Mm-hmm.
And he they cut to him, and he's standing in front of a rack of swords, and he's got a sword in his hand, and he sees another nicer sword that has a nice little hand guard on it and has a little flourish on it of some feathers or some tassels or something like that. And he decides that he wants that one.
Mm-hmm.
And he picks it up from the rack and puts the other one that he was holding back on the rack. And the whole rack just shakes. And every single sword looks like it's about ready to fall off. And this piece of crap wooden thing, it's like, guys, couldn't you at least have like a grip on either end holding the rack so it
Yeah.
didn't move? And like maybe do a second take.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't that hard of a scene, and it just takes you right out. Well, I mean, I'm already out of it laughing at the episode the whole
Right.
way through. But I mean, if you were, you know, maybe 1960s me would have been into it and not really thinking about it. But
Mm-hmm.
like that kind of stuff just takes me right out of an episode. And there's
Absolutely.
many of those that happen in this.
Yes, and the other thing that's pointed out is this alien starts working on people's brains apparently, and is
Yeah.
also psychic because he turns McCoy into this raging lunatic. He turns Scotty into this raging lunatic. This alien decides to make Chekhov rapey.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Two. Yes.
Yeah,
Two.
ooh. And have a imaginary brother. Like this whole thing was just. I wish we didn't have a Clara warning, but I'm sticking to it. This whole thing was a mess.
It
It
was
was.
a mess.
Oh, now we have to talk about this scene where Chekhov kind of goes bonkers and starts searching out Michael and
Kang.
Sarah's. Sorry, Kang.
Kang.
Yes,
Yeah.
and comes across his wife. And there is a scene where he gets, and I hate this word, but I'm sorry, it just suits what we're talking about. He gets rapey with her for
Yeah.
some unknown reason. And it looks like he's putting his hand over her mouth
Yeah.
to shut her up. But then I think he's kissing her with his hand in between the actress, who is Susan Howard, who I think was on Dallas at one point later on. And it's like he's blocking the kiss because he's worried about getting her makeup on him,
Yes.
I think.
I don't know.
And then he is thrown off and hits the bulkhead. And all of a sudden, there's this huge, well, actually, there's two of them, makeup stains on the wall.
Yeah. Well, and there's even Shatner comes in at the point where Chekhov is like getting all handsy.
Yeah.
And he knocks him, and he, supposedly it knocks him out. And of course you see him slide down the wall, and there's some big stains on the wall from where he hit. And of course when he hits the wall just shakes as well.
Yes. It's like take two people, let's get some Fantastic to spray down the wall and let's try it again. But no.
I think that this episode really tries very hard to sort of show how quickly the glowing orb alien can turn the thoughts and the will of the people on board, and we're supposed to feel like they are in peril because of this. But the whole time I'm just thinking, this is dumb.
Oh, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. And I'm going to say something very controversial right now. This is so dumb, it could have qualified as a Space 1999 episode.
Well, yeah.
That's how dumb this was.
Yeah.
The other thing is, Doug, and I know the computerized special effects maybe not in your department, I don't think, but I may be wrong on that. But in the remaster, which, as it turns out, actually the remastering may have taken longer than time to do than actually reshooting this shooting this episode. We're greeted at the beginning with this gorgeous remastered shot of the Enterprise against the backdrop of a planet. It looks fantastic. Could they not have charted up the alien? Could they not have?
Yeah,
but they didn't.
No, and it's strange that that's. I guess it's budget as to how the alien is in the scene a lot more. It means you're going to have to probably mask more things out, though. But the hilarious thing is you can see there's a scene where the Orby alien, it's basically just a glowing light. It makes way for like a doorway, and the camera is moving along, and you can see the grain on the film moving. And then all of a sudden the grain on the film stops and everything freezes except for this ball that goes through the bulkhead, and you're like, oh boy, maybe if I wasn't watching in HD I wouldn't notice so much,
right?
But it's interesting the things that they have chosen in all of the remastering to change, because they've done improvements on usually one of the ships that you see flying in. They've done improvements on the planets that you see. There was the explosion that happens. I don't know why they do it, but for some reason they blow up the Klingon ship. Was they being controlled by the alien at that point? Was that why they did that?
That was never really explained. It seemed a little too easy to blow up a Klingon bird of prey, because you don't actually see the ship. You see a blank screen, and then you see debris.
And it was like a weird. And that was like a weird redo of the explosion, I imagine. But this is the other weird thing, is it like you've got this super powerful alien that's capable of like destroying ships and like changing weapons into, from one material to another. And let's spoil how this ends for everybody. They defeat it by laughing at it.
Oh my God, Kirk!
They're like, Kirk might as well have just started doing like a Mean Girls reference to this thing, and like, are you sure you want to wear that color with this? And, oh my God!
Kirk calls the alien a dead duck at one point. I'm like, oh Jesus!
Like he said something like "beat it" and like port out or something like that. There's some sort of like
Uh,
nautical term that he uses him to
I
tell him
know
to leave.
that belt doesn't go with those shoes. Yeah, I know. Oh my god! So that is Day of the Dove. People, I'd avoid this like a Trump rally. I mean, it's horrendous.
Yeah, there's I think a couple of things that I really noticed on this is that the Klingons. This is our third episode. This would be the third one that I watched as I went through this.
Yes.
And so this was the third of the Klingons that came through, and of course, in each one of them, the Klingons look different, very, very different. They're
Yes.
either in this one, they're heavily caked with essentially blackface makeup.
That's the other thing. Yes.
And I've been battling myself as to like, is this something that's worthwhile talking about? But then I start thinking about them painting other people green. But then I start thinking, well, this is the alien race that's supposed to be the angriest and the most evil, and it's like, well, what's going on here, right?
Mhm.
But one of the things that I found very interesting was the mustaches that they were putting on these Klingons. I mean, there's some pretty good long mustaches on these fellas.
Yes. Oh, gee. It's like the ketchup bottles in the last show that we reviewed.
Yeah.
Requiem for Methuselah. It's just like, oh, people, stop. The
Yeah.
cheapness is just showing through.
And there's a scene where there's a sword fight happening among the crew of the Enterprise and the Klingons out in the hallway while everybody else is in engineering having a little chit chat. And one of the I think it's one of the Enterprise crew, he backs into a wall and, and nearly knocks it over. You could just see it rattling.
Oh my god!
And the one thing that I found impressive in this one, because in each of the episodes, they've had blades. Maybe they don't have that in the one episode, but at least in this one, the blades aren't all obviously made of 1/4-inch like plywood.
Yes.
Some of them actually look to be made of metal. So that there was at least that this time.
There we are. Well, that's our first carb. Now, our second carb, and Doug and I have not spoken about this, but I'm sensing that there may be a little bit of disagreement about the second carb. But I'm going to kind of begin it this way with Doug. Doug, what is your favorite sandwich?
Oh boy, I like a good. It's a tie, really, between a BLT and a good ham and cheese.
Okay, on what bread?
See, I love a BLT on like a nice, like a multigrain kind of thing, like a maybe, like kind of a multigrain, and then like for a ham and cheese, I like that on just white bread.
Well, okay. My favorite is salami and an onion bun. So if we're talking carbs here, I would say that this episode was a carb, but it would be an onion bun carb. This is probably going to be the best of the bad episodes that we do. And it is from the first season, and it is called Errand of Mercy. Now, everything about this episode is enjoyable, except for there is a plot hole in this that you could run a truck through, number one, especially from what we know comes after this, 55 years after this. Errand of Mercy is basically that the Enterprise, the Federation, and the Klingons run into Planet of the Amish. And they go down, they visit this planet. These people don't seem to have a care in the world. They don't care about Klingons. They don't care about the Federation. All they're really worried about is Kirk and Spock being harmed as opposed to them being invaded. And as we go along, this, of course, is standard Roddenberry moral teaching in this.
Yeah, we're definitely being preached to in this one.
Yes, which I don't mind.
Yeah.
Because as opposed to Day of the Dove, the sets look great. The outdoor shots look great. Everybody's behaving themselves. You have the glorious scenery chewing of John Colicos. Um, Even the Amish guys are pretty good. I mean, they're sedate, but that's what they're supposed to be
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
Um, and I like everything about this, but in the end, these people, the Amish people, turn out to be all-knowing, all-powerful aliens that puts the kibosh on the Klingons and the Federation ever having a war.
Well, they do, but they say they are eventually going to become friends.
They do, but we've had 55 years of the Klingons being being at war, except for when we started Deep Space Nine, and even when we started TNG, and even then we were still. So you have, and the other thing is that Star Trek never mentions this again, ever. Now, I have read some books, which are the Star Trek novels, the trade paperbacks. They brought it up, but that's not considered canon.
Right.
So you're giving me an episode that's good, but we know that it's completely useless from 1966 on.
Yeah, it seems like maybe.
Am I being too harsh, Doug?
Well, no, I don't think you are, because I agree. It's just, I actually, of the 3 episodes that we watched, I actually, this one I enjoyed. I mean, okay, this is the one I liked the most.
Okay.
Saying I enjoyed it probably is
Okay.
rough. But I like this one the most, because it actually, it doesn't, the pacing seems decent.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like in the previous episode, like in Day of the Dove, it's rushed. They're just rushing through the story, and it's the same gag playing itself out over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing about this is the grand reveal at the end of, why are these aliens who are, so backwards and or so, um uh, primitive, I guess is the word. Why are they not afraid of the Klingons, and how can they be so stupid? And they it shows how Kirk is, quick to anger and quick to want to have war,
Mm-hmm.
just as he's just like the Klingons, because the Klingons want war too.
Mm-hmm.
But these all-knowing glowing orbs, in the end, yet again, we
Yes.
get to see
Yes.
glowing orbs, because that's what
Even
aliens are, apparently.
even looking at the orbs, Colicos just acts the crap out of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I think that, yeah, it feels like there was something that was totally forgotten from what came out of this episode. I mean, this is the 27th episode of the first season, right?
Yeah.
It's the first appearance of the Klingons.
Yep.
And, they're, this is the weird thing, though. They really are trying to set up the Klingons, and in all 3 of these episodes, they're trying to set up the Klingons as being like, they're like the biggest, most powerful, enemy that the Federation could have. But I never see any peril, really.
No.
Like they're not a threat in
No.
any of these episodes.
No.
If
No.
anything, Kirk is just dancing around with them.
And this, we must point out, is a Roddenberry problem because, and we know this from the 4th episode of The Next Generation, because the 4th episode of The Next Generation was called The Last Outpost, which introduced the Ferengi as supposedly the big bad of the TNG crew. And then when you saw them, they were like 4'11" and obnoxious and not threatening at all, except the laser whips were cool.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
Roddenberry had a problem doing this, of creating villains, and this is why they brought a special Klingon guy on in the form of Ronald D. Moore, as they went along. But I liked the episode, but this plot hole just ruins it for me.
Yeah, I guess not being as big of a Trek nerdo.
Right. Well
like
done.
I'm seeing as we didn't get into. I mean, we did my pizza origin, but we didn't do my Star Trek origin here. Like, I didn't watch it much as a as a kid.
See, I'd forgotten that we'd forgotten to do that, and I was going to do it before we get to the protein. So let's do it now, Doug. What is your Star Trek origin story?
So I saw these episodes, the original episodes, probably whatever I saw them in the 70s. I would have seen them sort of mid to late 70s, and they would be showing on Channel 50 in Detroit, in syndication, and they would probably come on in the background. And so I remember seeing a couple of the more popular episodes, like the one where Ron Howard's brother is on it.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the Tribbles episode, and I think there's a few of them that I remember seeing. None of them are these ones,
right? Right.
But it wasn't until TNG came out,
right,
that I started watching that. That was huge for me, again on Channel 50, but this is when Fox started as Channel 50 in Detroit. And that was my Sunday morning routine, was to wake up, get my breakfast, watch, I believe it was 21 Jump Street first, and then it was followed by Star Trek Next Generation. And so I would watch the episode of TNG, and then as soon as it was done, I would call my buddy Mark, and we would talk about the episode.
Right.
And this was sort of, I think for me, this was the birth of my love of science fiction.
Was TNG.
TNG. Yeah.
Very interesting.
I really got into like the whole world of TNG when I worked with Geordie LaForge himself on a movie years ago. All I wanted to do was talk to him. I wanted to talk to LeVar Burton about TNG.
Right.
And what was it like to try to look through those glasses and stuff like that? I never got to say anything to him other than hi, but
right.
It was a big deal for me to have that day. So.
Right.
But
wow.
So and then basically once I went to university, that was it for Star Trek for me until I think one of the movies that came out, I think around the time of The Matrix.
Right.
That whatever that one was, I think it was The Journey Home or something like that. I can't remember which one.
Oh, the voyage home,
or maybe it was is that the one with the Borg?
No, that's First Contact.
First Contact. So I think maybe I did. That was the next sort of thing that I saw, and basically my contact with Star Trek that's been it. And so there's, I don't know a lot of the lore or the history of what happened with all the other episodes and other series. So to me, okay, they're Klingons, they're bad guys, they're supposed to be, but it doesn't bother me so much that we don't have. I don't see that hole. So, but I can see how it can be a big problem for somebody to square that away who has basically paid attention to the whole series. Genre.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Star Trek fandom still likes the episode, but I think it's cognitive dissonance. They kind of ignore that big plot hole because without it, there's no Klingons.
Yeah.
That when it comes right down to it, this episode, if it was actually followed, there would be no Klingons. So I think people kind of block that out. But it's a controversial choice. Doug doesn't agree with it, but I'm sorry, I have to put it in the carb category. It's good, but I just can't get over that. I just can't.
I mean, I still have my problems with this. There's that whole scene where they go to blow up the
munitions
dump, and they're clearly blowing up painted cardboard corrugated cardboard boxes.
Yes.
And I'm just like, guys, come on. And the one that like Spock drops the sonic grenade into is like, it's so loose on the top, it just kind of allows itself to open and then flop down, and it's the tiniest little box in the whole pile. And it rattles as he drops it in there. There's obviously nothing else in there. and Spock clearly says, as he's dropping this grenade on top of a pile of ammunition, he says, "I've set the delays to give us enough time to get away." He drops the damn grenade in there and starts counting from 5.
Yes. It's like you couldn't have set it at 10, Spock. Yeah.
you're a smart dude. You got lots of time. Make it 30. And they run away like maybe 20 feet directly towards a wall, and this enormous explosion happens. And they cut away, and there's like, just like a big blast happening off in the, from the distance. And it's like, oh my goodness, they cannot be okay after that. And basically they cut back to them, and it's the lights are turned, the bright lights are turned off, and they stand up, and they're, guarding their eyes, shielding their eyes from the bright light. And there's no debris around them.
No.
There's no smoke. There's nothing to suggest that they have been anywhere near an enormous explosion.
I know. But I think that they do enough right to make it good. But again, I just can't. Shall we get to the protein, Doug?
Sure. I guess the one thing I did like about this, and maybe it's because it was this, when I watched this all happened right at the beginning of the Russian invasion into Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
When Kor and what's his name? Kor. Yeah. When Kor and Kirk are basically, they're having their little fireside chat where, he's threatening Kirk with torturing him till Kirk gives up all of the, the secrets of the Federation.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirk looks at him dead in the eye, and in Shatner's overacting way, tells him to go climb a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And that really reminded me of the Ukrainian response to the Russian warship that was saying, drop your weapons or we'll blow you up. And the Ukrainians just reply, Russian warship, go F yourself.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I guess that was sort of, it was kind of a good little parallel happening at that one. But
yes.
I think that this was, the other thing I wanted to bring up was, I don't know if you remember a song in the 80s called "What's on Your Mind" by a band called the Information Society.
Yeah, from Minneapolis. Yeah, and you're going to tell the story, I would imagine. Yes.
Yeah. So there is, at the very end of this, Spock is talking about the magic of these beings and calls them pure energy, and it is Spock, Leonard Nimoy's voice, saying those two words, pure energy, that gets mixed into that song, and it's a sample.
Yeah, that's correct. I believe it's the subtitle of the song by the Information Society is "Pure Energy." I think the song title is "I Want to Know What You're Thinking."
No, it's "What's on Your Mind."
What's on your mind? Yes.
Yeah.
And look it up. Their lead singer was famous for going on stage in roller skates.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, Information Society. They were like a 2-hit wonder in the 80s. But yes, that's where Pure Energy comes from.
It was hilarious when I heard Spock say it. I was like, I know that sample.
Yes.
I know that sample. And I'm like, I want to know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And there's also, I think you did another episode, I Mud.
Yes.
There is, I think there's a quote. There's a voice of from somebody from iMud in that song as well, I believe.
Oh, is there?
I'm pretty sure.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah. Okay. Also, look up the episode on them called "Bands Reunited." It's very weird. However, now we should get to the protein. Now, Doug and I obviously are going to have an argument about this. Now, the protein involved here is not meat, people. The protein is cheese. Okay, I have to be. I have to be clear. This episode isn't the greatest episode they ever did. No, but I kind of love it. It's called Friday's Child. It is a second season episode, and it stars one of two Catwomen that we will be talking about as the series goes along. And that is in the form of a very fake pregnant Julie Newmar. Did I mention it's called Friday's Child? Yes.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Maybe I'm biased because I am a Friday's Child. But is Clara a Friday's Child, Doug?
I don't think she is.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to check.
This was written by Dorothy Fontana. And to Star Trek fans, they know who Dorothy Fontana is. She is a writer who was with Roddenberry from the beginning. She's written some very famous and very good episodes of Star Trek. The one she wrote in TNG, eh. But the ones she wrote in the original Star Trek were great. And it really shows in this episode because the Kirk, Spock, McCoy banter is A plus. This is a writer who knows her characters because she's been with them right from the beginning. And it really shows. Plus, we must point out the headwear in this is
Oh
bonkers, which I
my
also
God.
love.
Not just the headwear, it's everywhere. The costumes. Oh my God.
It is banana pants, people, but go with it because it's fun.
I have a note here on the computer in front of me in big text that says, those costumes. So much fake fur and tassels everywhere on the clothes, on the tents,
Yeah,
everywhere.
it's like they raided a burlesque convention, people. I
Oh,
mean,
man.
it's crazy. But again, we have another Klingon in this who's never named. His character name is Klingon.
Klingon.
Yes, which is very weird. But basically, what this is that the Enterprise wants to make a treaty with the natives of this planet over some MacGuffin chemical, and so they go down to negotiate. But the Klingons want to negotiate as well, and so this becomes the kind of agitation within the episode, in the fact that this is not Planet of the Amish like we just had. This is kind of Planet of the Celts in the 10th century, maybe Vikings. We'll go with that without the boats. Um,
Yeah.
so, and Julie Newmar plays the wife of the Grand Poobah, and he is killed, so she has to escape, or she is going to be killed as well. There's a huge continuity error in this, but we'll get to that. So she is sentenced to death, as well as Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are sentenced to death, but they escape, and they escape into, and this is the first appearance on this particular series of Vasquez Rocks. Have you ever been to Vasquez Rocks, Doug?
No, but I've only ever seen them on Star Trek.
Yeah, Vasquez Rocks is just north of Los Angeles. It's kind of, if you go to Pasadena and take a left, you'll get to Vasquez Rocks. It's very famous within Star Trek lore. Now,
this is the question I had: was this the same? Is this the same rock that the Gorn was fought on?
Yes.
In Arena.
Yes.
So this would actually then be the second time we've seen it, because Arena is in first season, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. All kinds of episodes were filmed at Vasquez. Even the Next Generation went to Vasquez Rocks. So we get to Vasquez Rocks where they're escaping, and as I can't stress this enough, the Bones Spock Kirk interplay is just exquisite through all of this. Zinger after zinger after zinger. Not only that, but just the way of talking to each other, like they've actually served with each other for 5 years. It's very casual in the conversation. Now, all of this said, among all of this Velveeta, there is a very troublesome point in this where McCoy strikes a woman after she has struck him twice. And the episode is written by a woman, but that's no excuse. So,
and not only does he strike her,
he brags about it.
he brags about how he says, I am a doctor, and I will damn well touch you the way I want, where I want, when I think I want to, or something like that, in the manner that my profession allows me to. And then he goes to get all handsy with her, and she slaps him twice, and he slaps her back. Like, this is... Oh, and then he brags about it to Kirk and says it was a right cross.
Yes.
And he says it's going to stay in his doctor's bag.
Yes,
so that's a way of dealing with patients.
There's no excuse. That's very troublesome. I will say that Bones has a classic line, one of his classic lines. I think "I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer" is like at the top of the pops. But in this one, he says, "I'm a doctor, not an escalator." That's close.
I heard him say that, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And it's like, "I'm a doctor, not a doctor," like. And I think that there was a very similar quote like that in the first episode, but that was by Kirk. He said, "I'm a soldier, not a diplomat," and it was like, well, we're you're taking Bones lines here, buddy.
Yes, yeah, big time. Is the act like everybody? I mean, it's got Julie Newmar and Shatner in it at the same time. Of course,
Oh,
everybody's going to overact, right? But again, it's part of the Velveeta. Go with it.
I,
Uh,
I I think the more I watch it, I just realize that it must be something about the '60s television, or it must be something about the actors that they're getting for all these episodes, because it's a very stagey, it's almost like soap opera acting. And you remember that episode of Friends when Joey talks about the fart,
yeah, fart
like
acting.
you do the fart acting. It's
Yeah,
basically that's what they're doing,
yes.
and it's just so much overacting.
Well, I think it was also it was a product of the studio system as well, because you would get signed to a studio. It was
Mm,
just like playing for the Jays, for instance. You would get signed to a
yeah,
particular team. It may have been Paramount or Universal or whatever, and then you'd get signed for 5 years, and then they just send you out to everything.
yeah, and
Uh,
I imagine too, with the speed at which they're making these things, because that previous episode I think was only, I think it was a 6-day shoot, I think, on for Aaron to Mercy.
mhm,
Like, once again, like, these guys are doing, like, they're doing it like so quickly. I mean, it shows to some extent.
mhm.
I don't know what the length was for this one, but yeah, I wonder how much leeway or lead time they had with the scripts when they were coming in. Like, maybe that is probably because of the studio system, where they're basically just like, okay, you're on Star Trek on Monday, you're on Lucy, or whatever was playing at
Yeah,
that
and
time,
you're on
on
you're
Wednesday.
Batman
Yeah,
on Thursday.
Batman the
Yeah,
next day. Yeah,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
get your lines when you get there.
yeah. I have to say that both Aaron and Mercy and this one, Friday's Child, did not seem rushed. I mean, you had your cheat. I mean, can we talk about concrete? Can we talk about styrofoam boulders now, Doug?
Oh my god, yes. Oh my
um,
god.
I mean, that looks, but they didn't really look cheap, either one of them. Not in the same way Day of the Dove did.
No, but what there was the cave that they went into, I thought was fairly well done.
Hmm.
For the time, especially, you got to imagine this is being watched on what, like, maybe your biggest TV is an 18, maybe
Yeah,
a 20-inch,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's standard def. It's maybe a bit, there's when they first come into the cave with um, what's her name, Eliane, I think is her name.
Yeah, LER, I think.
Yeah. So when they first come in the cave with her, there's some sort of dramatic lighting coming in from the left side of the screen, with from the opening, and you can see the wall of the cave, and it's very clearly craft paper that's been glued up against something, because it's very, very sharply creased.
Mm,
But when they come sort of further into the cave, the lighting is soft enough and it looks real enough.
mm,
But when they do the gag with the communicators, where they
yeah,
do the little feedback thing, and
yeah.
suddenly there's an explosion, and all of the Capellans get showered with
Oh
rock
my
bits,
god, yes.
and all of a sudden there's like a big styrofoam ball that knocks some guy over, and it's like, these are the same hunks of rock that the Gorn was throwing
Yes.
at Kirk, like, in Arena. It's
Yeah.
just like, it's just, oh, oops.
Yeah. We also should point out the 60s mores of the time are also exhibited here. First of all, now I have never had a child, nor have I ever been around one who's just had one.
Mm.
But in this, apparently she has a baby behind a rock, and 5 minutes later, not only is she not breastfeeding this poor child who hasn't had anything to nosh on yet,
Yep.
she's zipping around behind rocks
Around.
all over the place. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
she is of alien race that are apparently, as Bones described in the opening scene, they're all supposed to be as big as 7 feet tall.
yes,
None of them were anywhere near that height. There was a couple
no,
of tall men in the background, but
yes.
uh,
No, so she's because we can't mention that anything traumatic has happened to any woman south of the border. We've got her running around like crazy
Oh,
2 minutes after giving birth.
there's much like there was no blood in the sword fight
Yes.
scenes that were happening in Day of the Dove. There is no liquid that has happened during this birth.
No. And we also should point out that there's a continuity error because when she originally, one of the things that Bones treats her for is a burnt arm. Yeah,
Mhm.
wrong arm.
Yeah,
When she falls to burn herself, it is her left arm, but
yeah,
the burn shows up on her right arm. But
yeah.
hey,
But maybe injuries translate differently in alien bodies. But
after all of this Gouda, we're just nitpicking at that point. But I love this episode. It's fun. It would be, if I was going to list it, I'd say about 25 out of the 30 good ones. But it's fun,
I I just had such trouble getting over the costumes.
right?
Because I don't think we've really described this with enough justice. I mean, you really, listener, you do have to just watch it because there is so much fun fur, and it's of bright colors, and the hat, like this hairpiece that they're wearing, that they have to wear this
Oh,
weird,
I love
like
the headwear.
this weird like balaclava that has like hair coming out of the top of it.
Yeah, it's a balaclava with a pony.
Yeah,
It's like, oh my god.
and I just like I think maybe I could have gone through the episode and actually been a little bit more into the story, but I was just pulled out by those costumes.
Right.
They were just too much for me. It was just like, what am I watching here? And there was like the fact that like there's just as many tassels on the tents that as there were on the clothing. It's just
also,
like,
also everybody running around in UGG boots. It's like,
yeah. And okay, can we also talk about the triple flying penises that was their curl weapon that they had?
oh my god, yes.
So the Capellans had this throwing
It was a throwing
weapon.
star, yeah,
It was
kind of thing.
basically it
Yeah,
was a frisbee. It was
yeah,
basically a frisbee that it if you look at it, it kind of looked like three limp penises on a plate.
right.
And when they threw it, it, it makes the dumbest sound. It goes like I can't even like that, and it's like almost comical. And there's this battle at the end where Kirk has fashioned a bow and arrows, and is shooting at them, and they're throwing at him. And first of all, the bow and arrows, I don't think they worked quite the way that they thought they were going to, because Kirk lets one fly and it just kind of like flubs into the air, and
Yes.
next thing you see it go into the Klingon. He's like, ah! And then one of the Capellans throws a frisbee at Kirk, and he's like, and he's just like, oh, I'm out of the way, no problem.
Yes.
Just,
Well, two things. Number one, it must be the most inefficient weapon because after you've thrown it and you
it never
miss,
comes back.
you're done.
Yeah. Although it
Right.
looks like if it hit the guy that you're throwing at, it really sort of embedded itself, and that's how the very first we see
Oh
the
yes,
very
a
quick
red
death
shirt.
of the
Yeah.
red shirt that takes it, which I didn't mention in Day of the Dove. The red shirt survives.
Yes.
Did you notice that? He just doesn't die.
No, but that's because the alien, the glowing alien, has miracle
That's
healing
true.
abilities.
That's true.
Um,
He can actually control the life and death of red shirts.
the
So
other thing I'm thinking about when the bows and arrows arrive, I'm thinking you're in Vasquez Rocks.
yeah,
You've done
throw
this
some rocks.
before. You can make you can make a diamond shotgun. Come on.
And also the fact that when you were talking about Bones curing the burn on her arm, he uses football spritz to fix it. You see
Oh,
the English soccer cure-all has made
yes,
it into the future.
yes. Well, just like soccer, she would say that she was mortally wounded and then get the spritz and then go off and have a cappuccino and a smoke on the
Totally,
sidelines. Yeah.
totally fine. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
but
I mean, I love this episode. I understand that, they may take you out of some things, but yeah, I think it's a cheesy protein, but it's a protein.
look, I mean, if you just for Chekhov's hair, basically, like,
Oh my God. What was he went full beetle.
oh Oh yeah,
That
it was
that
like
that lid.
this bowl cut was crazy. Oof.
Oh, that lid was crazy.
But
Uh,
again, we have knives that were all 1/4 inch ply. Uh, like all the blades the bad guys had were just like the worst. And and you know, and like okay, so here's the thing. Ellie, what's her face, speaks clear English, clearly, like very, very eloquent at the beginning of the episode and through
uh,
most of it. And then is it because she's in child labor that she cannot speak properly for McCoy's name? She calls him McCoy. Like
yes,
she has trouble speaking all of a sudden.
but she nailed Leonard. That was the
Yeah.
other thing. Yeah, yeah. Yes, I mean, we're going to talk about another episode from the second season as we go along. That's also a complete comedic mess, but it's just such a joyful mess. You just can't not like it, and that's how I kind of feel about this particular one.
Well, and I do have to mention the biggest laugh that I had out of this was when Mob, the sort of the number
Yeah,
two, who is
yeah,
the ends up taking over as the leader after the what is his name, T dies.
yes,
He at the very end sacrifices himself in the most Beavis and Butthead way I had ever seen. I don't know why he did it. He basically walks towards the Klingon and he does like the Cornholio. He puts his
yes.
arms up in the air like he's about to say, "I am Cornholio," and he calls out Klingon and just stands there, and the Klingon shoots him, and then Mob's buddy throws a frisbee at the Klingon, and the Klingon dies. This is like,
Yes.
why did he do that? I'm so confused. But I'm just laughing because it's just like, why? You give him the crazy headdress, the fake fur, and,
Yeah.
and the cornholio thing. It's like that's the trifecta of comedy.
Oh, Doug. Well, that concludes our episode for this time around. Doug, thank you so much for joining me. Will you join us again for another trip around the sun, as it were?
Oh, you bet I will, because I have so much. You wouldn't believe half the stuff I didn't even get to talk about with this. So maybe we'll bring
Oh,
more of my comments about something
fantastic,
else.
fantastic. Now we should mention. I would like to mention something that Doug did work on. That one of my favorite series, and it doesn't get talked enough about, but I absolutely love it, and I cannot wait for season 3 to arrive. I don't know if Doug worked on season 3. He's about to tell us if he did. But if you're looking for something to binge watch that you haven't watched before, please watch The Boys on Amazon
Mhm.
Prime.
Yep.
Apart from the use of the C word, it is
Yep.
fantastic.
Yeah. And
Did-
season 3, which I did work on.
oh, great! So that you didn't get caught up in the whole COVID thing. They came across the border, did they?
Yeah, they came across. I worked from home, and we finished production back in, I think it was November or October of last year, and the new season starts, I believe, June or July this year.
Okay.
So
I
it'll be a good one.
I mention it because there is a Star Trek tie-in in the fact that the main protagonist in the Boys is, well, not the main one, I guess, but one of the two main protagonists in it is the so much beloved now Carl Urban, who plays, of course,
Mhm.
Dr. McCoy in the Star Trek reboot.
Yes.
He does not behave like Dr. McCoy in this, but
No,
he
not
is
so.
hilarious in it, and I recommend that if you have not seen it, watch it. It is fantastic. Doug, how can people get in touch with you if you'd like them to?
Well, if you really have to, you can reach me at Slugore, Slugore, on Twitter. I'm usually on there bragging about how good I am at Wordle. And trying not to yell obscenities at other people around the world that I don't agree with.
Okay, very good. Thank you again, Doug, for joining me. It's been an absolute hoot, and we look forward to you joining us
It was
again.
pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I guess.
Oh,
Oh, and also people can probably check out my Slug is Doug podcast too if they want to do that.
oh,
So,
there we go. Fantastic.
so.
Until then, people, I have gotten through this whole podcast without swearing, so I have actually gotten a gold star from Clara. Until next time, nerdos, doodles. Bye.